Hello and welcome to the Blessings in the Streets podcast. I am your host, Joseph B. Roberts. And in studio with me this evening is a phenomenal woman that I recently had the opportunity of connecting with. She's a one with many talents. She's a minister, wife, mother, writer, producer, director, author, poet, counselor, and even a doctor, as you can see. But she's walking in God's purpose, doing what He has called for her to do, and she's taking time out of her very busy schedule to hang out with us this evening to share a little bit of her journey, a little bit of her story, with the hopes of encouraging and inspiring and uplifting others. So it is my privilege and honor, ladies and gentlemen, to introduce to you our special guest this evening, Miss Marilyn Simmons. Marilyn, thank you so much for being on the show.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. It's such an honor. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem, no problem. I'm excited to learn more about your story and just hearing how you. I'm sure you're going to be a blessing to us all. So I'm excited about that. With that said, before we get into our segments, however, I do want to give you an opportunity to kind of give a brief introduction of yourself to our listeners, who you are, where you're from, what you do. Kind of give them a taste of who is Marilyn Simmons.
Okay. Well, it's very simple to me. I mean, the first thing you described, I'm like, oh, is that me? Because I'm just a small town country girl. I am from Mahale, Texas. Most people pronounce it Mahale or Mahura, so it's that little town that you can't pronounce, but it's spelled like Nexia, Mexia, just a little country girl. And I have two siblings. I have an older sister and an older brother. So I'm the brat of the family. I'm the baby. And we come from a big family overall, though. And so that's why I think I got this big personality from. And so I just love people. I love writing. And I just love sharing the gospel.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, again, I'm excited to have you here, excited to hear your story. So I'm not going to delay anymore. We want to jump right into this thing. So, for every guest that comes on the show, one of the opportunity to do is to just, have moments of reflection, if you will, about just where that story, that journey actually begins. Because I am a firm believer that a lot of what goes on, particularly early on in life, as far back as even our childhood days, that, certain encounters that we have, people that we meet, whether it's a good, bad experience or otherwise, we may not always understand why things are happening the way that they're happening, why those encounters have arisen the way that they have. But when you kind of move forward in life and you're starting to get a better clarity and understanding about what your purpose is, you start to have those moments of reflection about those times. Kind of makes sense why I had to experience what I experienced and why I had to have that meeting that I had with this person or that person. So, with that said, if you would, I want to take us back to your early beginnings of your journey, and if you would kind of share with us what was it like for you growing up, fond memories that you have about growing up, as well as if there's any particular challenges that come to mind that you'd like to share, you can do that as well. Kind of give us the foundational basis of where your story begins.
Absolutely. I do have fond memories of growing up. I trust me, I grew up in very humble beginnings, to say the least. And so like I said, there was a lot of people in our family. So we grew up just like I grew up with my cousins. I lived in a house with my cousins, my siblings, my aunties, all of us. So we definitely had a strong bond of family. And the thing about me, when I was younger, I think around 7 or 8, my cousins were around 9 or 10, and they would always be outside playing and having fun, or watching TV or whatever. And I found myself always being in my room, and I always had a book in my hand. I was always writing something or drawing or doing something. And they would be like, why don't you ever come outside and play? All you do is stay in this room and write. You're boring. You're this, you're that. So I was kind of like the little weird little outcast. I'd be in there. And we had this channel called PBS back in the day. And I used to always watch that. And it was channel 13. And they would say, you're so weird. Why do you just watch TV all day? But I would take the stories that I watched on there and I would reiterate them and I would make them my own. And so I would be staying in my room and I would be reading my Archie comic books and I would be rewriting stories. And that's just what I like to do. I didn't really like to be outside running and playing sports and doing all that kind of stuff. And I was just inside writing all the time. And back then, it was like an embarrassing thing because I was as weird or different or, something wrong with you. All you like to do is stay in the house and write. But as you said, those things kind of shape and form who God has you to be, and it's part of your purpose. And I didn't know that then, and I kind of tried to hide that, and I kind of tried to be ashamed of it. I would try to get out and play volleyball and play the football with my guy cousins and stuff. And they just never fulfilled me. I always found myself going back to the room and writing and reading, and that was just my thing. And to this day, I just love to read. I would literally just pick up anything and just start reading. And so I think that's where God was reiterating and showing me that this is your purpose, this is your thing. And so from 7 and 8, that was just kind of my deal. That's what I like to do. I like to just stay to myself and just read and to write. And I just began around 11, I started writing poetry. And then it just kind of turned into little skits and little plays. And so things of that nature. So those are some of my fondest memories. And my mom just allowing me to be me. And she would always encourage me and embrace that. She was like my best friend, you know. Because, like I said, I didn't really do a lot of hanging out and go out and make a lot of friends. I was really quiet. And so as I got older, I just began to embrace it like, this is me. And I like doing this. And it's not weird. And so then it became a thing where I was able to, at church, begin to write little skits for Easter or Christmas. And I noticed that people like that. They enjoyed that. And so I began to embrace it a lot more as a teenager. So those are my fondest memories, just kind of being in the house and writing. And I didn't really remember that, but my cousin Stephanie, she reminded me of that about a couple of years ago. She was like, I knew you were going to be a writer or something. She said, because you would always be stuck in the house and we'd be outside playing. And she brought that to my attention. I was like, you know what? I do remember that. Just I had posters on my wall, I had magazines stacked up. And so reading was always something that was just not fundamental, as they say in school, but it was just like I was just drawn to it. It was my passion. So that was one of my most favorite memories, just reading and writing and just being able to just express myself. And like I say, we had some humble beginnings growing up. So some of the not so fond memories, you know, there was a lot of us in the house and there were a lot of personalities there. There was a lot of clashing there. And my mom was like, she was very, very quiet. And I kind of took on that nature, but it's like something in me shifted at the age of 12. And I became like this little terror. Okay, I became like a little bully, a little bad girl. So my stories kind of shifted and my writing kind of got me in a little bit of trouble. I started writing things for my friends, different types of poetry for my friends and their little boyfriends and girlfriends. And so I had to quit writing for a while. I kind of got in trouble and I got punished for it. But even in that, you know, I see the enemy, anytime that you have a gift and anything that God gives
Hmm.
you, the enemy wants to take that and he wants to try to imitate it and use it for him. But no, God is like, I instilled this in you and you will use it for good. And so I went through that little phase, but I got back on track, thankfully. So, but yeah, I had some rough moments there.
Wow, wow. Well, first off, I appreciate your transparency and sharing that. And as I stated, a lot of things that go on early in life, while it doesn't make sense then, just even in our conversation here, I was able to instantly make the connection. I mean, you start off, having this gift and not really understanding, the power behind it, and then you have people on the outside, friends and family, kind of making fun, poking at it, like calling you boring, calling you, all other kind of, not so kind names, if you will, and
Definitely.
and you're feeling like this outsider, you're feeling like you don't fit in, and the truth is in those moments early on, to not fit in seems like a negative thing. But when you realize what your purpose in life is and you understand God's connection to that, now you say, you know what? I wasn't supposed to fit in. And that's actually
Absolutely.
a good thing. It's a good thing that I didn't fit in. And it's not because I'm stuck up. It's not because I think I'm better than anybody. It's just that I've been set apart. And God has purposely done that because He had an assignment for me to do in those early stages of your life in your childhood where you're doing this writing and everything. He's honing those skills. He's putting it all together so that as we fast forward to 2025, because of course our listeners don't know this, as I said earlier at the beginning of the broadcast, I said we were just recently connected. Well, to my listeners, understand we just recently connected because we have been identified as authors of distinction for 2025, which is, a great honor. And so, but we couldn't be authors of distinction. We couldn't be recognized as such if there wasn't some background work, that went into that process that got us to this point. So God uses those moments as far back as our childhood days to sort of to formulate that basis to kind of get our mindset and our hearts right so that when he's ultimately ready to expose to us, okay, this is what this whole writing thing is really about. Now the light
Absolutely.
bulbs come on and we're like, okay, okay, I get it now. I get it now. So let's see where this thing goes. And I love the fact that you pointed out that you had a point in time where writing sort of got, off track a bit where you were, maybe writing some things that would not have been in alignment with God's will. And that's not to knock you. You were a kid. You're growing up. You're doing what kids do.
Yeah,
But like you said, the he's recognizing that gift just like God recognizes it. And if he thinks he
absolutely.
has an opportunity to pervert it, to sidetrack it, to make it not to devalue it in some kind of way, he'll take those opportunities. But thankfully for you, your trust, your leaning, your dependency on God allowed you to stay mindful of that and immediately get shifted back over to where you needed to be. So then that way your
Yes.
work could live out the way and play out the way that God, again, purposely intended for it to play out through you, using you as a vessel to be able to impact and to pour into the lives of other people through your writing and as well as through other means. Of course, that writing being one of your core talents, and you will, whether you're doing it in poetry or whether you're just doing it in storytelling in your books or what have you. So, again, the author of distinction suits you well, considering the journey as to where it begins and all the things that led to that. So, just
Mhm.
I appreciate you sharing that. So,
Thank you.
Marilyn, as we have our experiences in the early stages of life, and as we enter into adulthood, those experiences don't begin to diminish in any way. In fact, they begin to increase in number and actually also begin to increase in complexity. And in the midst of all of that, as I say all the time, if you live long enough, there's going to be some experiences that cross your path that hit a little different. Experiences that when they come our way, regardless of how good we are at navigating and pivoting through challenging times, every now and then, even the best of us will get hit with something, a storm of life that sort of kind of knocks us off our feet, kind of knocks the breath out of us, so to speak. It weighs on us in a way where we might find ourselves, questioning, how am I supposed to get through this? How am I supposed to navigate my way through this? This is not something I can, use money to make go away. This is not something that I can use my various titles or influences or connections to make it go away. It's just me in this challenge, and I'm having doubts and fears and worries and anxieties, if you will, about how do I navigate through that. So, with that said, if you would, tell us about a time that's exactly how you felt, that this storm is before you. You don't know what to do with it, how to get through it, how to get around it. Um,
Ooh,
you're thinking this is going to be an impossible feat to overcome. Obviously, you're here today, so we can trust God made a way for that to happen. But maybe back then you just weren't quite so sure about that. You didn't know how that thing was going to play out. So if you would share with us a story that aligns with what I'm speaking of here, and what was ultimately the turning point when you saw some light at the end of the tunnel and coming out of that situation.
absolutely. I used to always think that the worst trial of my life would be if I lost my mom. And that was something that I did experience. I happened to be an adult at the time and I had my own children. And for some reason, it wasn't the traumatic experience that I thought it was. We had time with her, we realized it, and we understood it. And she went on, and we knew her lifestyle. We felt like she went on to be with the Lord. So I actually got through that better than I thought. But I have a niece who is more like my baby. I call her my baby. She's only 6 years younger than me, and she just ever since she was born, she's been the family favorite. She's been my baby. Well, she got grown and she had her own children, and she has 4 boys. And one of them was just like my son. That was my baby. That was my heart. And he went through some things, and we ended up losing him. And I'm glad that this happened just a couple of years ago. Actually, it's just been 2 years, like this month. And so I'm glad that this happened while I was a Christian, while I was saved, while I'm going around preaching the gospel, while I was going around encouraging others. Because a lot of times people think that when you're saved or when you're a woman of God, that you don't go through anything, you don't face anything, and that your faith is just, brimming over. But I'm glad that I experienced this because it taught me something and it taught those around me something. So we lost him at 19, and I tell you that was the trial of my life. That literally broke me. And I was like, no, God, I don't get this. I don't understand. We prayed, we stood for him, we covered him, and I just couldn't wrap my head around this. I'm like, this is my baby. God, I did this for you. God, I served you this. God, I sacrificed this. I had the nerve to, kind of like question God and put myself on this pedestal after all I've done. And God, you didn't hear my prayers. God, you didn't answer the way I wanted you to answer. And I got in my feelings and I got selfish and I laid around. I got depressed because a lot of people, oh, well, you're saved, you're a Christian. There ain't no such thing, and we don't do that.
Hmm.
And we do that, and that was a very very hard trying time for me. And again with my niece and watching her go through that, and then me going through it as well, and that was one of the hardest trials. And I tell you, I was broken. I was lost. I didn't read my Bible. I didn't want to go to church. I didn't want to pray. But yet I'm still telling her, oh, you gotta hang in there, you gotta hold your head, you gotta pray. And I'm telling her all this with this big smile on my face and all these encouraging words. And then the minute I leave her, I'm broken. And I'm like, God, what happened? Where did you go? Why did you allow this to happen? And that just really showed me, okay, you're not where you thought you were.
Hmm.
And God is still God. He didn't change. And if I really thought about it, I was like, God, I don't want my nephew suffering like this. We don't want him going through this. And that's what you asked for. So God took care of it. He just didn't take care of it the way that you wanted him to. And so I had to learn how to be specific in my prayers. That's one part of it. And then I had to also learn to accept God's will. Because just because I pray for something and just because I'm specific and just because God loves me, I'm not privileged. I mean, you give me no respect to person. We all got to leave here and we don't get to say how or when. So it just taught me, I mean, it humbled me because I had really had myself on this. I know I'm connected to God. I know, oh, don't you worry. We going to pray and this going to happen. I was like, girl, who you think you are? So it
Hmm.
just really, that breaking, I thank God for it because it really taught me and it grew me up. And it taught me how to really lean and depend on God and to really reverence God because I love God and I fear God and I knew who God was. But it gave me a reverence, a different respect for God and His will. So it was a time of, tragedy. It was a time of grief and hurt and brokenness. But I can honestly say that I thank God for it because what came out of that is even in his death, oh God, he is ministering yet to my family. I have family members now that I never thought would come inside of the church house who have been coming to church. His mom, my niece, she got saved. His dad got saved. His brothers are coming to church. They're enjoying. They're engulfing. They're taking it in. I'm watching friends of his. There was another young man that he's very close to, gave his life to the Lord. So I just like, God, I see you. And I was like, and I know my nephew, and he was like, yeah, I'll take that one, God. I'll take that one for the team. You can take me on.
Hmm.
You just bless them. That's just his little attitude, take care of them. I got this. And so I just see that even in death, his ministry is working and going forward. So I'm thankful for it. It was a time that really broke me, though. And I want people to know that we don't always have to be strong and put on this persona and hide behind these masks. When we're broken like that, it's okay to reach out to somebody because I'm always the one that everybody comes to. Oh, I had this dream. What does that mean? Or can you pray me through this? I'm going through that. Or can you help me do this? Or can you help me do that? And I would always pour and pour and pour. So I felt like I had to keep everything to myself and not even realizing I was in a state of depression. I was out of there. I was slacking. I was sitting down on God. So we have to learn that, we're never too high. We're never too mighty. Hit that altar. You have to hit it every Sunday. Get what you need to get so that you can be a blessing to somebody else. So yeah, that was like my Urakadan trial when I lost my nephew. And it just hit me really hard, but the thing that got me through that, it was nobody but God. He had to show me who he was and bring me back to myself. So yeah, that was my Urakadon right there. But God showed me that he was greater than that. And so I'm thankful to have overcome that. And God is just, he's still God. I'm like you said, I'm still here, I'm still thriving, and I'm still doing what I'm doing. And I see God yet working in the midst of that trial. So I'm grateful for that.
Wow. Wow. Again. first started. Appreciate your transparency and you sharing the story that you did. Multiple nuggets and gems to take away from this. You know, I found it interesting, as you said. I thought that the greatest death that could ever happen to me, that would crush me, that would devastate me, would be my mom. And I can identify with that because that was always the death that I saw fitting that mold. But
Mm-hmm.
you know, and but then you said, I found myself, it didn't affect me like I thought it was. And that doesn't mean that you weren't hurt. It doesn't mean that you didn't miss her or anything like that. Like you said, it was just the comfort in knowing for real that her passing means that she's truly in a better place. And
Yes.
so when you know that your loved one, regardless of what that relationship is, that they're going to be okay,
Mm-hmm.
um, it kind of helps, that process of grief, that process of healing from the pain of it all. And so I'm glad you pointed that out. But what I find interesting in that is, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm looking at that situation and I'm thinking, that didn't hit her the way she thought it was going to hit her. It hurt, but it didn't hit her the way she thought it was going to hit her. And did that maybe create perhaps a I don't know, an overconfidence in you that, you know what, if I can survive the loss of my mom, then nothing can hit me,
Yeah.
nothing can take me out, because
Absolutely.
I'm just strong like that.
Yeah.
And and I'm thinking God is sitting back and he's going, not that God wants you to hurt, but he
Mm-hmm.
also don't want you, but he also doesn't want us to get kind of a little too full of ourselves,
Come
into
on.
thinking that we are bigger than our storms. He wants you to know that he's bigger than your storms, but that
Absolutely.
that not necessarily you. And so it's almost like he took the pain that you would have thought that you would have felt with your mother. He transitioned it into somebody else who was close to you,
Yeah.
and it just seems like it hit you different. And I would even go as far as to say that maybe, and again, I could be wrong, but that maybe even that there was some pain in the loss of your mother that you didn't fully
Oh,
process through. And it was
yeah.
sort of a carryover into nephew, that now with two of them now gone, two of the closest people in your, two of some of the closest people in your life, that it was kind of a combination of both, a little carryover from mom that was unhealed. And then now
Yeah.
here's nephew, who you stated he had been going through some stuff and everything, and you loving on him like he's a son to you. And then when the time is coming near, you're praying on him. You're praying over him. You're asking God to do this, that, and the other, and he still passes away. And I love this part of your story because I had the same encounter with my mom, where we talk about that prayer and, oh, I asked you for healing, I asked you for this, I asked you for that. And a lot of times, yeah, and I like how you said you got to be specific about your prayer. And you got to know what you're asking for, because a lot of times when we have someone, a loved one that is close to passing away, whether it's an illness or something like that, and we're asking God to heal them, we're asking God to deliver them from this pain and suffering. In our minds, the way that story ends is that whatever that disease, whatever that situation is, that it's fixed. They leave the hospital and we go back to living life like normal. God is
Yeah.
looking at the situation as like, you know what? I feel your pain. I respect your concern about their well being. You know what? I agree with you. They've taken enough. So you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna answer your prayer. I'm gonna bring them home with me.
Yes.
And you're thinking, well, wait, that's not what I meant. I wanted you to. But if you asking me, and that's the challenge that we have when we go to God in prayer, is that, one, first off, we got to know that that's the route to go, is to pray.
Mm-hmm.
But then we also have to be mindful that if we're going to the one that we're looking for to solve the problem, to address the situation, then we got to let the problem solver solve the
Come
problem. I
on
can't
now.
go pray to
Yes.
him and then tell him how he's supposed to answer the prayer. I need to be
Absolutely.
specific in my request, but I can't dictate to the to the one that's going to be the problem solver how he's supposed to do it. Now I'm out of my
Yes.
lane, and so then when you call yourself, like you said, you went through that process. I'm in my feelings. I'm mad at God. I'm feeling some kind of way. I'm not only am I mad specifically about the circumstance, but I'm thinking about the body of work that I do on a regular basis. I pour into people. I encourage people. I minister to people. I try to live a godly life as a mom, as a wife, as a minister, and all that stuff. You couldn't hook me up on this one. You know how much he meant to me. You couldn't
Yeah.
come through. What else? You know,
Right.
what else I gotta do? That's how you feeling. And I'm glad
Yeah.
you say that because a lot of times to our listeners, if you're not a believer, you automatically can make assumptions about that we don't that we're supposed to be somehow so strong and we can't feel some kind of way. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, believers can feel some kind of way too. Any of us can.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no sin in you being mad at God. You know, frustrated doesn't mean that you're being disrespectful to Him. You're just being human. You're just, I'm feeling some kind of way about this. You know,
Yeah.
and but like you said, it was a humbling experience. It was something that you needed to go through because He needed to remind you that hey, while you're on the right path, while you're progressing in your faith the way that I'm loving and to see, I don't want you to ever get comfortable into thinking that you've arrived, that somehow that there's still no room for you to grow, that somehow, you know, don't you take on that super saintly persona
Uh-huh.
where you think, you know, I just everything is all smooth and I can there's nothing that I can't handle. No, remember who's your source. Remember who's your strength.
Uh-huh.
Remember who's your,
Yeah.
you know, who you need to be relying upon in all things. So I'm
Absolutely.
glad that you broke it down and walked it through like that because I think we all need to understand that. And we, again, we don't want to get full of ourselves and somehow
Right.
start to take on this role where we start to try to play God. Like you know, like we
Mm-hmm.
know better than him or that,
Yep.
you know, because like you said, he will humble us and he'll do it in his own loving God way, but he sometimes got to bring
Yes.
us down a notch or two to say, wait a minute now. I understand you're frustrated. I know you're hurt. I know you're upset, but pay attention to the lesson.
Mm-hmm.
I want you to see where I'm coming from with this, so you understand that it's not me. It's not personal. It's not me. It's not personal in the sense of me trying to attack you or
Right.
anything, but it is personal in terms of my relationship with you and me trying, which is why I'm letting you go through this storm. I'm letting you try to experience and see this, so that you can continue to build and you know and to close out on this segment. He took what was supposed to be a devastating dark moment in your life and he flipped it into a blessing where as you testified the family has come to the Lord, mama, brothers, sisters, kids, and so how you look at that and you go, wow, I miss my nephew,
Yeah.
but look what his death, which was supposed to be a quote, probably a negative experience, but from godly terms,
Come
from
on
the
now.
through the godly
Yeah.
lenses, it was a blessing. His family
Absolutely.
has come to know him. His family is in relationship with him, which means that his family, as they're dealing with their respective grief in the loss of him, as well as their challenges in other areas of their life, now they can see life differently than they would have seen without him. You know, trying to look at it through their own lenses, through what the world says is appropriate. And I don't know if you paid attention to our title for the show, but it aligns with everything that you're speaking about. You're talking about standing above the opinions of other people. I'm talking
Yes.
instead of you not standing above what the world says. I'm standing on God. I'm standing on I'm standing on what
Absolutely.
He has to say. And so
Yeah.
that is so critical. And I'm so glad that you shared the story that you shared because I mean this is something that we need to hear, both as believers who may not be at that point in their life just yet. Yeah, this is how God works. This is why it's so important to have a relationship with Him. And even
Yes.
when you're dealing with somebody, you're encountering with somebody like yourself, and I identify with you in the sense that when you're normally that person that people come to for advice, for the encouragement, for the for the prayers and all of that. It's an honorable and respectable position to be in, to to be thought of that highly by people that they find comfort in you in seeking your assistance and coming alongside them in prayer and speaking to God. But at the same time, at the end of the day, that encourager is still a human. That encourager still hurts and goes through just like you do, and which poses the question that I've brought up many times before, that as an encourager we face is, who encourages the encourager when we need encouragement, when the encourager needs to be encouraged, who does the encourager go to? If I'm the one who everybody always comes to, but what happens when I'm hurting and I need, who do I go to? Who's that person I can pick up the phone or knock on their door in the middle of the night or whatever and say, hey, it can be a very lonely place to be in sometimes, and we end up a lot of times bottling inside because we're too busy trying to be strong for everybody else, not understanding that hey, we got some stuff that we got to deal with too. But that's why it's so great to know that we have a God that even if there's no specific person that we can call upon, we know that we can always call upon him, and he's going to be there for us. And over time, he'll make sure that if we are struggling with having that person in our circle or whatever, he'll bring people to us that we can feel, that safe space that we can talk to and partner up with, that no judgment zone. But at the same time, that person that'll keep it real with us and tell us when we're right, and they'll tell us when we're out of pocket and all of that
Absolutely.
kind of stuff. So,
Yes.
so I'm thankful for that, as I know you are, to have that, you know, uh, that access as well. So beautiful.
Yes,
Yeah, that's
definitely.
great stuff. I'm thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
Um, Marilyn, as you said, you shared obviously a very heavy situation. Anytime you're losing a loved one, that can be devastating for anybody. But the reality is that while there are some storms that are going to be heavy like that, sometimes the storms is just, to be honest, an incident of just life in. Some random thing, the inconvenience and annoyance that we have to deal with or what have you. But with that said, when you do find yourself facing moments of adversity, when there's a storm, a challenge, a situation, an obstacle before you, I'm curious to know, what is it that you personally like to do that kind of helps you to process and work through those challenging times? Something that you, a series, whatever, if it's one particular thing or if it's a series of things that you like to tap into, that kind of helps you stay locked in while you're dealing with whatever it is that's in front of you. It's one of those days. It could be today. Something happened. I got to deal with this situation. Does Marilyn work through whatever situations come her way when she's facing adversity?
Yes. Well, the first thing I definitely have to do is I have to pray because, like I say, growing up, you shape who you are. And like I said, I went through this phase of like being just a fighter and just being like a bully. So that's my immediate response when even the little nagging thing at work or this little person just get. That's my first response to. Uh, Wait a minute now, and so my first thing I have to do, Jesus, I have to, have to draw it, Lord. And so I pray first, and then I go and I pick up my little book journal, my little book. I pick this up, and I start writing. But I don't write books. I don't write plays. I don't write anything like that. God has given me the gift of being a songwriter. So I write out songs and I write songs and everything I write got the same melody because I ain't can't sing, I can't hold a note, I can't hold a tune. So I'm gonna sing every song I sing the same way, but I'm gonna sing it. So I do. I write out those feelings of my frustrations of how I'm feeling, and then I'm like, okay, now God, turn it around, fix it. So I began to just write songs, and then I'll just sing those songs in my head. I mean, it can be the craziest thing. It could, like I said, if somebody's really just annoying me, it could just be something as simple as, Lord, I need your help. And I'll make up a song and I'll sing that song and I'll sing that song until my spirit is calm. And it reminds me of David
Mm.
and Saul. And it's like the music and the song. And it's like I'll put a melody in my head and I'll sing those same few words over and over. And before you know it, I got a whole song and I'll sit there and I'll sing it, and sing it until I sue that, because I mean, it's powerful. The anointing of God and the anointing of the song and just that melody, it is no joke, y'all. The Bible is real. It really calmed that spirit in me because I didn't forget how to fight. I didn't forget how to cuss. I didn't forget how to light you up, but I have to want to not do those things. So for me, it's just picking up that pen and like, don't say that. How about you say this? So it's like redirecting myself. I kind of have to talk to myself, redirect myself with that pen. I'm like, okay, God, you the author and the finisher, but I need to rewrite this story because this ain't finna end well. They about to get me. And so the pen has become my best friend. I just let God have his way with the pen. So I write songs and I sing them to myself until I override that fleshly feeling. I do. So I know they be thinking like, oh, well, she didn't say nothing back. What's she doing? She didn't pick up a pen. She ignoring me. I really am. I'm trying here. I'm praying and ignoring, right? So that's my go-to thing. I'm always gonna pray first because, and I know Jesus probably laugh at me like, "Heard his child is again," because that's just the way I say it. I'll just pause and I say, "Now, Jesus, now you know." And so I just talk to him like that, and I'm like, come on now, and then he's like, you got this, and we can't always just go, okay, God, here, handle this. No, the same power that he has, we have that within us. And we have to channel that and we have to reach and get that sometimes. Because I'm not gonna lie, this mouth they be ready to fly off, and I'll be like, and then Jesus. So yeah, writing songs, just and you have to be in control. It's like self control. Control yourself. Get yourself together. You don't let people take you back to where you were. I don't want to have to come back, fight my way back from that. I don't want to be that hellish person. I don't want to be that argumentative person. I don't want to be that person that, oh, here she come. I don't want to see her coming. No, I want to remain the person that people said I can go to her. You know, she's going to talk to me. She's going to listen. I can confide in her. But I want people to turn and go the other way when they see me coming. I've been that person. I didn't like myself. I'm like, you're a mean girl. You are mean. You're hateful. You got a bad attitude. You know, you're a bully. And I didn't like that. So I'm not going to allow anybody to take me back to that place. So it's just, I don't mind in a minute, honey. I'm going to call on Jesus and I'm going to pick up that pen and I'm going to write. So that's my go-to. I advise everyone pray first and then do whatever your thing is to trap that and to push it back. You got to push back. And so that's my thing. I write. That's my way that I minister to me. Because, like you said, sometimes you don't always have those people. Sometimes you are isolated because of where you are in the position that you're in. But even as a child, I thank God that I had already experienced that. I didn't have a lot of friends. I stayed to myself a lot, not knowing that that was leading up to now. So I know how to deal with that. I know how to be cool on my own. Yes, sometimes I do need people, but God reminded me you had your mom when you were younger. You were never alone. You had somebody. And then me and my big brother, we were really close. You had somebody. Then my niece came along. We were really close. You always had an scapegoat. And now I will not leave you alone. You got somebody. So if it's nobody right there in the physical, I'm just Jesus. So I'm never alone in this thing. But like you said, he will put people in your path. He will place people in your path that you can go to and lean on. And I'm learning how to do that because I've been so conditioned to do it on my own and just get through it. But I'm learning now that everybody is not like you. You can trust somebody. God will show you. And I thank God for discernment. And so I do have a couple. I have a God, but I have a couple of people that I can. But sometimes I find myself, don't burden them. That's my main thing. I don't want to
Mhm.
burden anybody. I don't want to bother them. But I'm learning how to lean on people, and it's okay to release so that I don't hold all that stuff in. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm so glad you said that because again, when you are the encourager, when you are the one that people oftentimes rely upon to be strong for them and to be there for them, we can fall victim to this this thing of I don't want to burden people. They
Hmm.
they they need me, and
Yeah.
and be like, well, you need you, and that it's okay to hand off your stuff to somebody else. And again, you have to, with anybody, you have to be selective as to who you hand your stuff off to. You don't want to just tell your business, your darkness and seasons in life with just anybody because everybody's not going to be able to understand it. Everybody's not going to be in position to give you the proper advisement on that. It's kind of like when they tell you, like, if you're married and you're dealing with something, it's probably not a good idea to talk to your single friends about it because the single friend
Woo,
perspective is going to be different
come
than
on.
the married person's perspective. It's probably not a
Absolutely.
good idea that if you're dealing with a spiritual matter to talk to to your ungodly friends and associates
Come on
rather than
now.
somebody who's in the faith like you. Doesn't mean that
Yeah.
somebody's better than the other. It's just that they're in the same lane in the same atmosphere that you're in, so they're going to be able to relate to what you're talking about, what you're dealing with, a little bit differently than someone who's outside of that space. So, and then even
Absolutely.
to you taking that moment to pause to say, you know what, I like to just get to writing, writing some songs, before I, let loose at the lips, because it's like, hey,
Yeah.
Lord, I haven't always been saved. And like you said, I haven't forgotten those other
Mhm.
ways, but to your point, I got to make sure that I don't allow the tense, uh, the stress and the drama, if you will, of the moment.
Yeah.
I saw something interesting
Mhm.
just the other day. It was speaking about a common solution that is oftentimes proposed when we're dealing with people who get on our nerves. It tells us, oh, just kill them with kindness. And this particular video that I saw was saying, basically was saying, kill them with kindness is good in some instances, but then sometimes, they're not deserving of your kindness. You actually need to kill them with your silence. Like you need to just
Mm,
not say nothing because they're not deserving of your energy or your conversation, you know. And so I thought about that as you were sharing your story because that's an example of that. It's like, you know what? I'm not getting ready to try to be nice to you because you ain't giving me nice vibes right now. And but
right.
I'm also not gonna let you take me to where to how I would have responded to you back in the day either. So the best way for
Right.
me to do is to just and just because I'm being quiet don't mean I'm punking out. It don't mean that you got away with something. It just
Yes.
means that I am taking an opportunity to gain control, to vent. In this case, vent in my creating my song, and bringing myself down, take emotions out of the moment, so that now I can hear from God as to how to proceed moving forward with this particular individual, whether it's somebody in the workplace, somebody at church, somebody in my family, whatever. I now can be open to receive what He has to say to me because if I'm in my emotions and I don't have an opportunity to take to purge that out of me, you know, to
Yeah.
let out whatever I'm feeling in some kind of way, then I'm more likely to have those knee jerk reactions, and I'm more likely to say and
Yes.
or do something that I can't take back, or that would be in conflict with who He's created and designed for me to be. You know, I don't want to
Absolutely.
compromise, you know, who I am, you know, because there is a standard of excellence that He's wanting me to maintain. And if I let, you know, if I fall victim to the tricks of the enemy and let my emotions get the best of me, then yeah, enemy wants to see you pop off.
Of
The enemy
course.
wants you to see you popping your neck and telling them a piece of your mind, you know. But he knows that that's an unhealthy practice, and that's something that could negatively impact your influence and your ability to minister to other people. Because if they see you doing what the world does in moments of challenge and that relate to you, why would they listen to what you got to say? Because they're looking at you like you know different than me,
Absolutely.
you know. So you got to protect that. But you're at the same time you're acknowledging that hey, just because I don't pop off, don't mean that I'm not feeling some kind of way. I just channel it
Yes.
differently and I process it differently in a way
Yes.
that God would have for me to do. I maintain a control of myself to where
Absolutely.
you ain't gonna see me, you ain't gonna catch me off guard like that. It's not that easy to trip me up like that. Yeah, you
Right.
pushing that nerve, you on that last one, but I'm not gonna give you the satisfaction of taking me where you think you want to take me because you try and come at me some kind of way or whether it's a little flippant comment or whatever. So I love your approach to that, and to our listeners, if you don't currently have one, you could tap into some of the things that she spoke of because there's no one set way of doing it, but there is a standard to do it. You know, am I dealing with my challenges
Absolutely.
and moments of adversity in a godlike manner, or am I dealing with it in a world-like manner? Because there is a distinct difference in how you
Oh,
handle it, depending
definitely.
upon which side
Yes.
you pick. So, you know, you just want to make sure you're picking the right side. And if you don't know where to begin, that's where that relationship with God, that conversation with Him, He can tell you, okay, let's start with this, you know, and build on that and gives you those steps. And in the midst of that, in the meantime, I'm going to bring some people in your circle. It don't have to even be a massive circle, but I'm going to bring some people in your circle that they're going to keep it real with you, but they're going to speak in alignment with how I need them to speak to you. Again, not giving you worldly advice, but giving you godly advice. You know, being straight up with you, not telling you, not being yes men and yes women to
Come
you.
on.
Keeping telling you if you out of pocket, telling you out of
Yeah.
pocket. If you're on to something, telling you that you're on the right track with that. You know, but
Absolutely.
keeping it real, being truthful, but keeping you calm and keeping you locked in and saying, no, 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 don't do that, don't do that, don't go there, Marilyn, don't.
Yeah.
You know,
Absolutely.
so good stuff. Good stuff.
Yeah.
So, Marilyn, when you think back on all your experiences of life, good, bad, or otherwise, if you had the opportunity to speak to the younger version of yourself, when you think about that person who was, you know, she was kind of to herself, you know, didn't fully understand what her purpose was, had even had a point in time when you felt like, you know, was I having the right attitude? Was maybe I'm being a bit pushy, being a bully or whatever, not really fully connecting with what God was doing with me. What would your words of wisdom, your words of inspiration be if you could talk to the younger Marilyn, or just even to even any of our listeners who might be struggling right now with how to properly process dealing with challenges and adversities of life? What would be your words of encouragement to them as to what you see as best practices, or at least a starting point of what they should do in their situations that can be helpful for them to grow and handle those challenging moments in a more healthy and godlike manner.
I would have to say, what I would say to younger me would be obedient, because I found myself in a lot of situations that I wouldn't have been in had I just been obedient and listened, to my mom, to my siblings, to my teachers, to God, to the voice of God. Because there are many times that God has told me, nope, that's not the route. Don't do that. But I'm like, well, God, I really feel like I should do this. So I went right on. Like, as just growing up, there were friends that my mom was like, it's just something about them. I don't want you hanging with them. Oh, mom, you're being too strict. Da, da, da. Going and hanging with those friends and finding myself in the craziest of situations and even the most traumatic. I remember this guy my mom did not care for. And she was like, "Oh no, you don't need to be talking to him. You don't need to be going off nowhere with him." And I'm 18 at this time. I'm like, now I'm grown. I have
I'm
friends
grown.
that are 15 and 16, and their moms let them date. Their moms let them do this and that. But she was like, it's not that. It's just something about this guy. So I took it upon myself. I'm gonna be disobedient. I'm gonna go ahead. I'm gonna see this guy. And just being transparent, I went out this guy. We went off and we went somewhere, and we ended up on the back road. And I'm like, what we doing back here? I'm like, what's going on here? And I'm still in my fighter mode at this time. I've been in church and I'm saying I know the Lord, but I'm still crazy a little bit. So and so we're on the back road and we're like, he's like, oh, we're about to do this, that, and that. And I'm like, no, we're not. And so I always used to, when I was young, I used to always carry a blade with me. But for whatever reason, I didn't have it with me. I had like a fingernail file with me or whatever. So we got into a scuffle and I made him take me back home. But even though I'm still being disobedient to my mom, and I didn't just go in the house after this almost traumatic experience, my still wanting to be grown self, I'm still gonna stand out here. I feel like, oh, I've been gotten him straight again. That power that we feel like we have, and God is telling me, just go in the house, just do what your mom said, stay away from this person. No, I sit outside and in my own backyard. I want to sit there and still talk and conversate with this guy because I feel like everything is smoothed over. He apologized. And in the back of my head, I'm steady hearing, just go in the house. Just go in the house. But no, I stayed out there, and this guy ended up raping me in my own backyard, right at my own home. And then I can't tell my mom because you'll be right then, and then I'm gonna get in trouble, and
Wow.
then you're gonna do something to this guy, then you're gonna get in trouble. And so I lived with that for from the time I was 18. I never told anybody. I told my husband maybe about 6 years ago. Finally told my husband about it, and I still dealt with that. It was just maybe 3 years ago that I actually released that person and released myself because I could hear his name, or I could hear somebody say about a memory about a certain type of car or a certain type of guy, and it would just trigger me, and it would mess me up. And it literally, I didn't get delivered from that, and I'm about to be 51. And that happened when I was 18. So I would definitely be
Wow.
obedient. Listen to, like I said, your teachers, your parents, anybody that's telling you right. You need to be obedient. And even in my walk with God, just being obedient. Because my first marriage, I heard just as clear as day. I knew that God, I didn't send this man. This is your, don't do this. My pastor told me don't do it. My mama told me don't do it. I did it. And when I tell you we fought every day, I'm talking about crazy fighting. We fist fought, running each other off the road, fought. We weapons fought. I mean, it was just miserable. And all three of my children, well, my son was very young. He didn't really see a lot of it. But my oldest daughter and my middle daughter, they kind of had to deal with a lot of that and see a lot of that and just that toxicity. And then my son, he didn't see a lot of it. But when I tell you, that boy had me at school every day for fighting and acting up. And I'm like, why you like this? Where did you get that from? And all I could hear in my head, really? Like, really? Where you get it from? So we have to be careful about those soul ties and about those things. Just be obedient. So that would definitely be what I would tell my younger self. Please be obedient. And I would advise anybody, if you know you're hearing from God, walk in obedience. Just do it. You don't have to understand it. You don't have to know why God is telling you no.
Mm.
You don't have to know why God is telling you go left, or you don't know why God is telling you to wait 5 minutes. You don't know why God stalled that car. Just wait. be obedient. So that's it, because it's key. It's such a key factor. Just listening and being obedient. I'm telling you, it makes all the difference in the world. I would have been a lot further along in ministry, in my career, in my business, just period, had I just been obedient. Because I held up a lot of blessings for others in my disobedience. And I see that now, and I'm like, oh, you know what? Had I not did that, we would have been married a long time ago. We would have this, but being disobedient. So it's so important. So that those two words right there, be obedient. That's what I would definitely say. Because you know when you hearing from God, we just I'm gonna override that. I don't want to hear that. It's my conscience. It's not your conscience. You know that's God talking to you. You just being disobedient. So that's what
Right.
I would say. Be obedient.
Wow. Well, again, thank you for your transparency in what you just shared, and but I stand with that.